Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the 17th Annual Federal Interagency Holocaust Remembrance Program. I want to thank all of you for coming out today, and I would especially like to thank the German School of Washington, D.C., and Christoph Eichhorn, the Minister of the German Embassy here in Washington, D.C. The Holocaust Remembrance Program began 16 years ago. The principal speaker was the Deputy Secretary of Education, Madeleine Kunin, and it was sponsored by 5 federal departments and agencies. Today, it is sponsored by 27 federal departments and agencies, and we will hear from 3 people with 3 unique perspectives on the 11 million lives that abruptly ended, exterminated not for who they were, but for what they were. Adolf Hitler's rise to power began after, and in many ways because of, Germany's military defeat in World War I. In 1920, he joined the National Socialist German Workers' Party, known as the Nazis, working to bring order back to Germany, to rescue it from economic collapse, and to carry out his vision of nationalistic expression. His dream of a racially pure empire would not tolerate Jews. They were the German nation's true enemy, he wrote, not a race, but an anti-race. Hitler became leader of Germany as chancellor in 1933, and his persecution then of Jews intensified. They were banished from government jobs and institutions. Their shops were boycotted, and they were classified as subjects instead of citizens. 5 years later, in November 1938, 100 Jews throughout Germany were killed. 30,000 others were sent to concentration camps, and thousands of Jewish homes, businesses, and synagogues were burned. Bricks were thrown into their windows, glass shattered throughout Germany. It came to be known as Kristallnacht, the night of the broken glass, and it was a crucial turning point. Now the government didn't just condone violence, it endorsed and encouraged it. The deadliest phase of the Holocaust had begun. And 1 year later, when Germany invaded Poland, so had World War II. In the end, an estimated 11 million people were killed in concentration camps throughout Germany. Jews, homosexuals, senior citizens, the mentally ill, the disabled, Soviet prisoners of war, intelligentsia, slave laborers, non-Jewish Poles, political dissidents, Jehovah's Witnesses, trade unionists, gypsies, Freemasons, anti-Nazi clergy exterminated. And with Germany lying in ruins after 6 devastating years of war, and with defeat imminent, Adolf Hitler decided to take his own life. April 29, 1945, he and his mistress, Eva Braun, bit into thin glass vials of cyanide, and Hitler shot himself in the head. And as we look back on this time, this remembrance program encourages us to look back on the genocide carried out since the end of World War II. The tragedies of Cambodia committed by the Khmer Rouge, the ethnic killing of Albanians in Kosovo, the Muslims in Bosnia, the Tutsis and Hutus in Rwanda. Since 2003, the world has stared in the face of the death of 450,000 people in the Darfur region of Sudan. Clearly, our commitment after World War II to end genocide with the line "never again" has not been realized. And today we reflect on why we must keep trying. We have 3 guest speakers today, all of whom I am really excited to introduce you to and very excited to speak to. And I will introduce them right now. Our first speaker is Eva Kor. Eva and her identical twin sister Miriam were born in 1939 in northern Romania. In 1944, when she was 10 years old, she and her immediate family were transported to Auschwitz. And she and her twin sister were selected by who is now known as the Angel of Death, the ruthless concentration camp doctor Joseph Mengele. For the next 9 months, Eva and Miriam remained at the concentration camp. They were experimented upon. They were injected with potentially lethal strains of bacteria, and they were not treated. The rest of her family was never heard from again. It is believed that they perished in the gas chambers. When the war ended, Eva and Miriam were freed. Eva first moved to Romania, then to Israel, and then settled in Terre Haute, Indiana. She created a museum, which we will discuss today. and she was the driving force and appeared in the documentary Forgiving Dr. Mengele, which we will talk about as well. Our second speaker is Robert Wagaman. He was born in 1937 in Mannheim, Germany, brought up as a Jehovah's Witness and classified as handicapped. His mother was arrested and briefly imprisoned for her activities as a Jehovah's Witness. She gave birth shortly after her release, and due to the stress of imprisonment and insufficient medical care, Robert's hip was injured during delivery, resulting in a permanent disability. In 1943, his mother was ordered to bring 5-year-old Robert for a medical examination to confirm his condition. She overheard the doctors discuss plans to give him a lethal injection after lunch. Robert's mother waited until the doctors went to lunch, took Robert and his clothes, and escaped. They spent the remainder of the war hiding with Robert's grandparents. His family survived the war. In 1963, Robert emigrated to the United States and now lives with his wife in New Jersey. And our third speaker is Helmut Caspar von Moltke. Born in Bonn, Germany in 1937, his parents were major participants of the German resistance movement against Hitler and the Nazi regime. They led the Kreisau Circle resistance group from their estate in southeast Germany, discussing how to handle war crimes and plans for the German government after Hitler. His father also offered advice from his law practice in Berlin to Jewish families trying to salvage their belongings or to leave the country after the war. In January 23, 1945, a German Nazi court trial sentenced Helmut's father, and he was hanged. Helmut moved to Cape Town with his mother after the war, received a law degree from Oxford, worked for a German industrial company until 1993 when he retired, and he now lives in Hanover, New Hampshire. His mother, Freya, passed away very recently on January 1st, 2010. I would now like to ask Eva to come up and light the candle as we begin our inscription of hope.
I would like to ask Helmut and Robert, please join me, because we are all survivors of a tragic world event. So I want you to witness that. And if I don't know how to do it, I'll help you. I'll let you help me light it. I think we light this candle in the memory of millions of people who perished in the Holocaust, and also in the memory of all the genocides and people who perished in those genocides, in the hope that this candle will shed a light to illuminate the dark souls and minds of the world. And if you want to say anything?
No, I agree that we should remember the people who died as a result of the dreadful war which Germany unleashed on Europe and which cost the lives of millions of innocent people.
May it happen never again.
I believe in the sun, even when it is not shining, and I believe in God, even when He is not there, and I believe in God, even when He is silent, and I believe every trial, there is always a way. But sometimes in this suffering and hopeless despair, cries for shelter, to know that someone's there. But a voice rises within me, saying, hold on, my child. I'll give you strength, I'll give you hope. Just stay a little while. I believe in the sun, even when it is not shining. And I believe in love, even when there's no one there. And I believe in God, even when He is silent. I believe for every trial, there is always a way. May there someday be sunshine. May there someday be happiness. May there someday be love. May there someday be peace.
We're scrambling frantically back there trying to get the right microphones for our three panelists. In the meantime, we're just going to improvise with one. Right, Robert?
That's fine.
We'll be all right.
Absolutely.
So, Robert, you were a target on two fronts. As Jehovah's Witness and as a disabled man, essentially.
Yes. Jehovah's Witnesses were banned by the Nazis because the philosophy of the Nazis was of a superior race. And Jehovah's Witnesses can't go along with that because we call ourselves brothers and sisters. We do not know borders of man. We are one family, the human family. And so therefore, my parents were, as Jehovah's Witnesses, being sought after by the Nazis.
And the Nazis had a difficult time with people who were disabled because it was considered a hereditary defect, meaning it could be passed on from generation to generation, not part of the pure German.
Yes, with me it was that my mom, due to her religious activity... Thank you. Does it work?
You comfortable with that, or do you want me to hold?
Does it work? Oh, good. Yeah. Yeah, due to her religious activities, she was distributing the resolutions saying that the Hitler regime will take away all human rights. And of course, that did not go very well over with the Nazis, and the Nazis went after Jehovah's Witnesses because of that. And my mom was not immediately caught, but about a half a year later, she was incarcerated while she carried me. And when she was released due to an amnesty of Hitler, when he had his birthday, he said anyone who has no criminal record and who was not a Jew could be released. She was released, gave birth to me. I was a breech birth. My hip became defective. Now I had 2 strikes against me. Born to Jehovah's Witnesses, which were under ban, and also me having a defect, if you will. And in those days, the T4 program, which was the euthanasia 4 program, was in place, and that meant anyone who had a defect perished. Even though my malady was not hereditary, I also was targeted to perish.
You remember being targeted twice to perish. Tell me about that.
Okay, the first time when we were ordered by the Grübelfürsorge, the Department of Disabled People, we went to Berlin to relatives and kind of laid low for a few months. During that time, my mom went to different doctors. They said that could be repaired, and that was all she could do. And then we went back to Mannheim. We found a doctor who did do the surgery, but it did not work. And so the second time they asked us to come to Schlierbach by Heidelberg to a clinic, an orthopedic clinic. There the Nazis doctors decided that I would be permanently disabled, and my mom was sitting in the hallway, overheard the conversation, and there they said, oh, after lunch we give him a needle and put him away. And of course, ladies, I don't think it would go over good with you when you would hear that your little son would be dead in a couple hours. So when they went to lunch, she grabbed me, we went down to the Neckar River, she put my clothes on, we went back to Mannheim. Mannheim shortly thereafter was by air raid to 80% leveled. We like to believe that my records were gone too, but that made it necessary for us to escape and take refuge with my grandparents' father's side.
And they never came? They never came looking for you?
No, I believe, or that's my belief, that my records were destroyed.
Oh, right.
Okay, so now we were in a little town called Ickelheim. And there, first day of school, I did not do the Hitler salute, nor was I singing the national anthem. And of course, I'm not a hero, and I was looking for the biggest guy I could find and was hiding behind it. But I was seen and was denounced. The next day, officials came and wanted to pick me up. And only due to the fact that my grandfather was a well-liked person in that little town, he interfered and they left without me. But that meant for us to move on, and we went to my grandparents' mother's side and lived in a little cabin in the woods. No flowing water, no electricity, the outhouse 150 yards away, and the well where we had to pick up the water another 200 yards away. Every drop of water which we used had to be cooked on a wooden stove. No electricity, kerosene lamps, candles, etc. And of course, that was until the war was over.
How does a little boy process this?
Well, first of all, I could not go into the village and play with other children because of the fear that I could spill the beans, if you will, and say where my parents are. So that wouldn't have gone very good, you know. And I became very inventive. See, I always wanted to fly because I'm coming out of a family of aviators. So we had, and this is just one incident, fern like we have over here, but high like this. And so what did I do? I cut it down, put it on my arms, and I wanted to fly. And we had terraces like from here to there. Needless to say, when I started to fly, I made a belly landing, and that ended my career as an aviator. Now, you may laugh, but you know, as a little boy of 6, you had to be inventive, and when you're alone, you have to think about of all kinds of things what you can do not to get in trouble.
I think when you're little, you understand going to church. You understand this concept of God. But I'm sure at some level you thought, why are we doing this to ourselves? Why continue to follow this religion when it could get us killed?
Well, I honestly can say I didn't think about it at that time. But later on in life, I saw that my parents were God-fearing people. And my mom taught me how to pray, while my father always was on the go because the Nazis were after him. And I could see when you pray for something and you walk along with your prayers, that God will hold his hand over you. And that's what I experienced. And that's what we experienced even when we got bombed out, where my father almost got killed, and due to a happy circumstance, he survived. We all survived, even though we were, if you would want to call it, poor, because we had nothing, because we lost everything in the air raid. But we were rich spiritually, because we relied on God to take care of us, and we could see it every day. We survived.
Have you been able to reconcile the evils of World War II, of the Nazis, with your religion? Where is God in this?
Well, first of all, I have no animosity towards the people, because now this system is gone. We are still here, and the only thing I could say is for every one of us here, if you know what is right, stand up for it. Even you can only do a little bit. Let's say like a child in school, when he sees that bullying is going on and he stands up, then his friend comes over and now two people are standing up. And so other friends of those two come, and all of a sudden you have 4. And then you have 8, and then you have 16. And then the bullying cannot be done. And so therefore, if you know what's right, stand up for it. And pray about it, and God will be with you.
I know this is going to be painful for you, but would you mind giving that microphone to Eva?
Yeah, no, I just want to see who is it.
Hi, Eva.
Hi.
Eva was little, 10, when she and her sister and the rest of her family were transported to Auschwitz. And you remember that day.
Yes, we arrived in Auschwitz after 4 days in a cattle car. We were immediately taken off from the cattle car on a little strip of land called the selection platform, and within 30 minutes, my parents, my 2 older sisters were gone. Miriam and I were holding hands, and we had no idea what would become of us. We became part of a group of actually 13 sets of little girls, age 2 to age 16. We were taken to a shower room where we were processed. I became capital A-7063. My twin sister became capital A-7064. And then we were taken to our barrack. Our barrack was a wooden horse barn, modular horse barn, transported from Germany to Auschwitz. Very crude, extremely filthy. We were given bunk beds on the bottom. We couldn't sleep. And so we went to the latrine. As I entered the place that first night, there on the filthy latrine floor were the scattered corpses of 3 children. This is the first time I have seen anybody dead. I realized immediately that that could happen to Miriam and me. So I made a silent pledge that I will do anything and everything within my power to make sure that Miriam and I shall not end up on that filthy latrine floor. For the next 9 months in Auschwitz, that was the one idea in my mind that I never let go of. I never let fear or doubt enter my mind. In my mind, Miriam and I were going to walk out of this camp alive. One more experience from Auschwitz that is very powerful. I was used in a variety of experiments. I was injected with a minimum of 15 injections a week without knowing the content of those injections, then or today. After one of those injections, I became very ill. In fact, I desperately tried to hide because the rumor was that anyone taken to the hospital never came back. And so I was taken to the hospital, where Mengele came in the following morning with 4 other doctors, and he looked at my fever chart and he declared, laughing sarcastically, he said, "Too bad, she's so young, she has only 2 weeks to live." I actually refused to die. I made a second silent pledge that I will do anything within my power to prove Dr. Mengele wrong, to survive and be reunited with my sister. For the following 2 weeks, I have one single memory I remember, crawling on the barrack floor because I no longer could walk, and crawling because I found out that there was a faucet with water at the other end of the barrack. After 2 weeks, my fever broke, and I immediately felt a lot stronger. It took me another 3 weeks before the fever chart showed normal, and amazingly, I was released and reunited with Miriam. I would like to talk about we were liberated on January 27, 1945 by the Soviet Army. And that day, to realize that we were free, we were alive, that we have triumphed over unbelievable evil, that my little promise to myself, that first night in the latrine, became a reality. I also thought that once I survived, my life would go back to what it was before. But unfortunately, after 9 months in refugee camps or DP camps, we arrived back in Romania to find out that no one else survived. I do not speak about my past only to teach people about what happened. I find that that is not enough if we are going to live up to the idea of never again. And I came up with 3 lessons that I usually give young people when I speak to them. And in this case, I think I'm going to share it with you, more mature people. Lesson number 1, never ever give up. No matter how difficult your life might be, they are not as difficult as mine was. I never gave up on myself, and I want every single one of you, as young or as mature as you are, to remember that when you give up, nothing ever happens. But if you never give up on yourself and on your dreams, everything good in life is possible. Lesson number 2. One of the reasons that Hitler was successful in rising to power was because he used prejudice. Prejudice against Jews, prejudice against Jehovah's Witnesses, prejudice against handicaps, prejudice against gypsies, prejudice against political opponents, and anybody who didn't fit his ideal for an Aryan race. But prejudice is still with us today. And I will confess to you, I am prejudiced. I do not like the way young people dress today. When I lecture at a school, I tell them if I ruled the world, for one day, all the students from grade 1 through 12 would be wearing uniforms. And of course, they don't like me. And then I tell them, of course, I don't rule the world, so they can go back to their own silly styles of clothing that are not appropriate for students. And I was lecturing at a local high school in Terre Haute, Indiana. In front of me were 3 young men with their jeans so baggy that they had to hold it up with a hand. And I was walking behind them when one of them dropped a book. And I saw places where the sun never shined. I was very embarrassed and I turned away. But my next idea was that these are all bums and drug addicts. So I talked to the teacher, and the teacher told me, no, these are very good students, and they have never used any drugs. So I realized that even I have to get to know the person and judge people on their actions and content of their character. Lesson number 3. I have forgiven the Nazis. I have forgiven Dr. Mengele. I have forgiven everybody who has ever hurt me. Forgiveness, in my opinion, is not for the perpetrator and not because they deserve it, but I, the victim, deserve it. And if we realize really what makes a person a victim, a person becomes a victim when their power to rule their own mind, think what they want to think, act upon it, and their own physical freedom is taken away by force. And I discovered by meeting with a Nazi doctor in 1993 that I had the power to forgive. No one could give me that power and no one could take it away. I couldn't figure out what to give this Nazi doctor as a gift, and that's the way I came up with a letter of forgiveness. I believe that forgiveness is an ultimate way of dealing with the world's problems. If we can help every single victim in the world to help heal themselves, and they have to take that choice. We cannot force it upon them, of course, because then we would victimize them. But if we teach it, advocate it, and help each victim be free from what was done to them, then we understand that anger and pain, in my opinion, they are a seed for war. Forgiveness is a seed for peace.
Helmut Kasper von Moltke, thank you. You're all very much the same age, almost. Very much the same age. You're very close in age. You were 2 when the war began, 8
That's right.
when your father was sentenced. What do you remember?
In contrast to both Robert and Eva, who, though they are the same age as I am, they were subjected to the Holocaust and the problems and the terrors of the war. I myself actually had a happy and normal childhood. I grew up in the country. We had an estate, and my life was normal right throughout the wartime period. So I am here not as a personal survivor, but as a witness to my parents' activities and their friends. And I do remember things about my father, but they are the normal things one remembers about one's father when he comes from time to time and spends Christmas and holidays with us. But my experience is that I come from a family which believed strongly that the Nazis were an evil for Germany and opposed them from the beginning. My father was an international lawyer, and though he was a young man, he spent the 30s before the war broke out traveling to Britain, to England, where he was called to the bar, and telling his English friends, some in considerable positions of power, that Hitler meant war. And he didn't find very many ears willing to hear that because it wasn't believed, and it was a minority of people in the Allied countries who really believed that Hitler meant what he had written in his book and was going to do it. And so when the war broke out, my father was conscripted as a lawyer into the German government, as an international lawyer, into the German government apparatus, and proceeded to watch as the German armies swept over Europe and seemed to be on the point of complete victory. But as an isolated opponent, you had very little power, even as a German, to do anything about it. And my father and his group was born out of what for them was this moral crisis that they faced at the apparent victory of evil as the British army was forced out of continental Europe at Dunkirk. And he and his friend Peter Jörg von Wachtenburg started a correspondence on what Germany might look like without the Nazis at the end of the war. And out of this grew a small group of people who shared this belief that one had to look at what Germany could be without such a terrible government after the war was over. And they spent the period between 1941 and 1943 gathering people from all walks of life, farmers and businessmen, conservatives and socialists, Catholics and Protestants. Of course, Jews were not available. All sorts of representatives of the civil society in order to build a consensus of what should be done with the evils of the Nazi government, and what should be done with Germany when this horror was over. They knew that they were risking their lives. If they'd been discovered, they would have immediately been put to death. But they finished their work in 1943, and about a year before, 10 months before that, my father first noted in his letters on October 10th, 1942, he had had confirmation of the death camps in operation. And that was the first knowledge that he had of confirmation that the Nazis were actually doing what they wanted to do to eliminate their enemies and the Jews. And my father was arrested early in 1944 for something nothing to do with his work on which he'd been planning with his friends. But he and my mother had long ago made up their minds that this was a battle they wanted to fight, and they were willing to risk their lives to do it. Then came in July of 1944 the bomb plot of Colonel Stauffenberg, which failed, and quite a number of you may have seen the movie Valkyrie with Tom Cruise, which portrayed that fairly recently.
Now, did he portray your father?
No, he did not, because he portrayed Klaus Stauffenberg, the man who placed the bomb, and he portrays the actual event of planning and executing the bomb plot. But my father was in jail already at the time, but they found the records of the meetings he had held, and he was then brought to a jail in Berlin, and they held a trial which said that anybody who didn't believe in the ultimate victory of Germany was committing a crime punishable by death. In other words, you had to believe in victory, or you were you suffered the death penalty. And my father was convicted by this court and executed in January 1945.
And you were 8.
I was 7. I was going on 8. Yes. Yeah.
Were you able to process it? How did your mother explain this to you?
My mother explained it to me, and I was still a child, and as I said, I'd grown up in an innocent environment, and I found her a week or two later crying, and she said, I asked her, why are you crying? And she said, because of the death of your father. And my response was, still? So you can see that I was finding it difficult to process it at the time. It's been later on in life that I've understood what all of these decisions meant.
Your father wrote to your mother right before he was executed, "We are to be hanged for thinking together."
Yes, that's what he wrote. My parents were fortunate enough that the Protestant minister at the jail my father was at was actually a member of their group. And so they could correspond without the authorities knowing about it. And my father sent detailed letters of the trial, the reasons they gave, how it happened, and all the details surrounding it. And so we have a complete record, uncensored by the Nazi system, which of course did not want these things to leak out. And indeed, he did say, I'm being hanged because myself and my friends, we thought together.
I imagine it was a real struggle for them. They had a love of their country, and they were watching this country commit horror upon horror.
They did have the love of their country. They were, after all, trying to find a future for Germany. And they actually decided that after these two horrible wars which Germany had been involved in the first half of the 20th century, the future of Germany lay in integration within Europe, and they laid extensive plans in terms of both the trials of the war criminals and also of the outlines of how Germany could be integrated into Europe, a lot of which can be seen in today's discussion about the European Constitution.
Do you forgive the same way that Eva does?
Yes, we do. My father wrote in one of his letters, "These people are true believers of Baal, the pagan god, and he thought that they had real beliefs, but they were obviously of the terrible sort of a false god."
Eva, I want to get back to you and talk about forgiveness a bit more. Okay. Dr. Mengele, for people who don't know him or haven't heard of him, was ruthless. He was notorious. He was nicknamed the Angel of Death.
Correct.
He performed experiments that, for some, are just unheard of.
Correct.
He had an obsession with identical twins. There were attempts to change eye color by injecting chemicals into children's eyes. There's one anecdote about him taking a twin's eyeballs and attaching them to the back of another twin's head. He was high on power. He was a doctor, but he wasn't doing it in that name.
Well, he was a doctor, but he was playing God. He was definitely interested in creating blue-eyed blondes because that fit into the agenda of Hitler to create a world dominated by blondes with blue eyes, tall and healthy. And also, The reason he wanted the twins was because not only they could inject one twin with something and the other not, was that he wanted to have every German mother to have at least 2 children with every birth, possibly 3 or more. So we are talking about the early ideas of fertility. Now, one thing I didn't mention that was the reason the experiments became deadly were because German pharmaceutical companies contacted Mengele and Dr. Vasseur, and they studied diseases, germs, and drugs. And this is why about from the 1,500 sets of twins, only 200 individuals were known alive at the time the camp was liberated. Mengele acted as God, and we feared him in Auschwitz as God. And I think that he felt tremendously empowered by what he had the opportunity to do, and he did whatever he could to use that power. We were the only thing that I always wanted to do, and I want to get back to something that maybe Helmut was talking, and Robert, being children. How do you deal with that as a child? I felt, while I was in the camp, that the whole world was a big concentration camp. And all the children in the world were in a place like I was, where there were the bad guys, the Nazis, without parents, of course. And then one day, I saw an airplane flying over Auschwitz. And the airplane was flying really low. I could see the American flag on one of the wings. And I want you to know that at age 10, I knew very little about the world. I was 6 when the war started. Our village was Romanian. It was occupied by Hungary. So I knew there was a Romania, there was a Hungary, and I knew there was a Germany because I heard Hitler in the radio yelling that he will kill all the Jews. And I knew that there was a United States, because we had an aunt in Cleveland who used to send us letters, and the stamps on the letters looked like the American flag. Would that airplane flying over Auschwitz been a British, French, or Soviet, I wouldn't have known that they were going to try to free us. It was important. In Auschwitz, every day felt like eternity. And that airplane flying over Auschwitz, bombing Auschwitz, gave us hope that somebody was trying to free us. And that was very, very important in a situation that I was in. Going back to Mengele, I do not know what happened to Mengele, but should I meet him, or should I have had the opportunity to meet him, I would say 2 things to him. What you did was terrible, but in spite of that, I forgive you. And second, please give us the data and information on what you injected us into, what did you inject into our bodies?
Mengele died in 1979.
I disagree.
Oh,
And I know the Justice Department might not agree with me.
go on.
The report that the government, the Office of Special Investigation, under Neil Shell and his deputy Eli Rosenbaum, who is still the chairman of the Office of Special Investigation, have said that these were Mengele's bones. In that report, on page 168 or 169, it says that the Mengele family, namely the stepson Karl-Heinz Mengele and the attorney Hans Sadelmeyer, went to see a Dr. Hans Munch after the purported death of Joseph Mengele to find out if Mengele would be found guilty for the experiment, for the selection, or both. And that Dr. Munch said, for both. The Justice Department report states that was issued in 1992, and it's called In the Case of Joseph Mengele. It's about 200 pages with 400 pages addendum or exhibit. And the Justice Department report says that Dr. Munch assumed that Mengele was alive, but indeed he was dead. Now, you are all smart people here. If I will tell you in simple English words that the Mengele family went to see Dr. Munch to ask if Joseph Mengele's corpse would be found guilty or innocent, how many of you are buying it? And that's exactly what I'm not buying. But I have a lot more information. And maybe you can help me as an afterthought someday to have an open hearing at the Justice Department where I could present the information that I have, and I would be glad to see the information that the Justice Department have. And there is no disrespect for you. You all are working very hard. Thank you.
I want to ask all of you one final question before we wrap up. We're also here today not just to remember the Holocaust, but to talk about ending genocide that continues. What can we take from your experiences during World War II to bring us forward and try to end what we're seeing today, still seeing, despite promising that we would never see it again?
Well, you know, as one of Jehovah's Witnesses, I strongly believe in what the Bible says about our system today. Our leader, Jesus Christ, taught us how to pray for that kingdom to come. Once before, this earth was cleaned of wicked people in Noah's time. Again, it will take place where this system we live in will be cleaned of people which are not God-fearing, which are wicked, and will not work for peace and security as we would know it in a paradise. And so we leave it up to our Creator, which created this beautiful earth, on his own time when he will correct the situation. And so therefore, if we live our life, a life which is laid out as a Christian, which when Jesus Christ gave us on the Sermon of the Mount, that we should be doing different things, that we should, happy are the merciful, happy are, and so on. If you read what the Bible says about that, you have a happy life, and you help your neighbors to get to know what will be ahead in the future. We are going into a situation where the Bible talks about that he will destroy or bring to ruin those who are trying to ruin this earth. That is what the Bible says. And the Bible also, in chronology of the Bible, says that we are living in those last days of this wicked system. And if you want to look into the Bible, read the letter from Paul to Timothy, chapter 3, where it says, in those last days there will be wicked people, there will be lovers of money, there will be lovers of themselves, self-assuming, haughty, blasphemers, disloyal, liars, and so on. And this is exactly what we have, and we can be confident that that's what we are praying for in our Father prayer, where it says, thy kingdom come, that kingdom will soon be established, and it is necessary to get to know what each individual has to do to please God. And of course, it's a great privilege to be here with all of you people, because I know that we have only little time left. And so therefore, I wish all of you the best. And please, have an open mind. If you have a Bible, look into it. It has the answer. Thank you.
Thank you, Robert.
Well, my perspective is completely different. I do not know really if there is a God, Maybe there is, maybe there isn't. If there is, I would like a debate when I go up there. I would like to find out why is he hurting the innocent children first. So I don't know if his ideas, they work for him. I would go with my 3 lessons. Number 1, if we have something important in life to do, we have to do it and we cannot give up on it. Sometimes I waited for somebody else to do it and guess what? It never happened. Number 2, prejudice is a big evil in the world. It's used everywhere and it's up to every single one of us to work on it. But the ultimate healing that I feel it's essential is a forgiveness. Forgiveness of those who perpetrate. And I can tell you that in 1997, there was a very nasty article written in Der Spiegel magazine in Germany against Dr. Munch, calling him a good old Nazi, giving his home address. His house was firebombed. And of course, Dr. Munch by 1997 was senile. He could not really understand what was going on. And when I called the reporter Bruno Scherer, I said, why did you put his address in your magazine? He said, well, I am the grandson of a Auschwitz survivor. I finally got even with these people. And the guy, Munch, didn't even understand what was going on. Who had the problem? His children and grandchildren. So it is that vicious cycle. Anger and pain are passed on to children and grandchildren. And looking at that, children and grandchildren of perpetrators become victimizers. In reverse, children and grandchildren of victimizers become victims. And this vicious cycle has to end. And I don't think that government can do anything about it because government cannot pass a law to forgive. But I think every single one of us can advocate and help each victim. If we help a victim heal what their pain is, they are going to become healed. And as I said before, any person who is at peace with herself or himself does not want to hurt anybody. And if it benefits the victimizers, so be it. They will have to actually take responsibility for their action, but that is not my job. Thank you.
I want to respond to Caroline's question. Of course, for somebody growing up as a German, what Germans were willing to do to their fellow human beings and their fellow citizens has been a shocking thing to live with all my life. And I do think that genocide is unfortunately still with us. We've seen it in Rwanda, we've seen it at Srebrenica, we've seen it in Asia. There are cases of people hating each other and still hating each other for reasons of religion, which I thought when I was growing up were remnants of the Dark Ages, but unfortunately I do see that the Dark Ages appear to be still with us. Our own experience was that my parents, who were just normally religious when they were young people, did find that their religion was a great solace to them in the years of stress. So I have that to report, which that it was an anchor for them, and I'm grateful for that. and I think we should continue to do it. But to use religion as a reason for persecution, I think, is iniquitous, and iniquitous in the sight of any God.
It burns, brothers, it burns. Our poor shuttle pitifully burns. Angry wind with rage and curses tears and shatters and disperses. Wild flame leap, they twist and turn. Everything now burns, and you stand there looking on, hands folded, palms upturned, and you stand there looking on while our poor shuttle burns. It burns, brothers, it burns. Our poor shadow pitifully burns. Tongues of flames with force and power have our villages devoured, and the wind howls and turns. Our poor shadow burns, and you stand there looking on, hands folded, palms upturned, and you stand there looking on while our poor shadow burns. It burns, brothers, it burns. God forbid the moment may affirm, when our city which now holds us will as ash and flame enfold us, sign of slaughter leaving all with blank and empty walls, and you stand there looking on, hands folded, palms upturned, and you stand there looking on while our poor shuttle burns. It burns, brothers, it burns. Help can only come if you return. Love which shadowed once inspired, take up arms, put out the fire, douse it with your blood, be true, show what you can do. Don't just stand there looking on, hands folded, palms upturned. Don't just stand, put out the fire. Our shuttle burns.
Thank you, Sarita, and thank everyone so much for joining us today. And one special thank you to the Romanian Ambassador, Adrian Cosmin-Verita. Very glad that you could join us today. And one final round of applause for Eva Kor, Helmut Kasper von Moltke, and Robert Wagman.
I would like to thank Kirk Marusak and all the departments of the federal government for putting this project together. You have worked very hard, and I think both Helmut and Robert, I am sure, agree with me. We all thank you. It's an important project.
Thank you, everyone.
Hello. I have some awards to give to our participants. I'm Kirk Marusek, the coordinating chairperson of the Federal Interagency Holocaust Remembrance Program. Our first award is to Helmut Kasper von Moltke. Would you please come up? Second award goes to Robert K. Wagman. Our third goes to Eva Moses Kor. We're giving one to Carolyn Leiders. Thank you. And last but not least, one to the Alexandria Klestet for our music. Thank you for coming. Appreciate it. Have a good afternoon.